All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into a really fascinating topic.
Yeah, it's one of the big ones.
The connection between consciousness and ethics.
Ooh, that's deep.
It is. And, you've given me a ton of research on this.
I did.
So
it's a good one, right?
It is. We're going to really try to unpack it and find some of those mind-blowing insights.
Absolutely.
So to start off, we're mainly going to be looking at this chapter, Consciousness and Ethics.
Okay.
I mean, just the title itself already gets you thinking, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So some of the big questions we're going to try to tackle today are like, does being more conscious actually make you a better person?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. And can a machine actually be ethical if it can't even feel anything?
Interesting questions.
Yeah.
Definitely things to think about.
So let's get started. Maybe the best place to begin is what do we even mean by consciousness and moral decision making?
Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty big words. Not your typical coffee shop conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So, maybe think of consciousness as the ability to be aware, right? Aware of yourself, your surroundings, even other people's thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
There's self-awareness. That's kind of like recognizing yourself in a mirror, hey, that's me.
I got it.
But then there's also theory of mind.
Ah, okay.
And that's more like understanding that other people, they have their own perspectives.
Okay.
Their own thoughts and feelings, which may be completely different from yours.
So when I think my friend is going to love this new band I found.
Yeah.
And they absolutely hate it.
Exactly.
Different perspective.
That's a perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about recognizing that other people, they have their own unique internal world, so to speak.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, so moral decision making?
Yeah, that's the other big one.
That's figuring out right from wrong.
Exactly. It's like using your brain power to kind of reason things out, to empathize with others, and even think ahead.
Okay, to the consequences of your actions.
Yeah.
And all of this, it really ties back to how conscious you are.
Right. The more aware you are,
Yeah.
the better equipped you are to make, those tougher calls.
Absolutely. And, research even suggests that there's this link between self-awareness and the level of moral reasoning you're capable of.
Okay, so the more self-aware you are, maybe the more nuanced your morals can be.
Exactly.
Interesting. So where does, the physical brain come into all of this?
Ah, yes, the brain, the command center.
Right.
So it's not like there's a tiny little moral compass just sitting there in our heads.
Right.
Although there is a part of the brain that plays a really big role in this.
Okay.
And that's the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, the PFC for short.
PFC, all right.
Think of it as the executive suite of your brain, right?
Okay.
It's responsible for all the high-level stuff like planning, logical thinking, regulating your emotions, and, navigating social situations. Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
It kind of keeps everything in order.
It does. And all of these functions are really crucial for ethical behavior.
Okay, so what if something, goes wrong in this executive suite?
Uh-oh.
Would that, mess with someone's ability to make good moral decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. Studies have shown that damage to the PFC, especially to a specific area called the ventromedial PFC, can really impair judgment.
Right.
This area is really important for processing emotions.
So if it's damaged,
yeah,
people can't consider other people's feelings.
exactly. They might struggle to factor in empathy or really grasp how their actions impact others.
Wow.
They end up making decisions based on pure logic, without that emotional component.
So their moral compass is kind of broken.
That's a great way to put it. And there's actually a classic example of this. Have you heard of Phineas Gage?
Phineas Gage rings a bell.
Yeah, he was a railroad worker back in the 1800s.
Okay.
And he had this terrible accident where a metal rod went straight through his skull.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it damaged his frontal lobes, including the PFC.
Wow.
It was really fascinating because before the accident, he was known as this responsible, reliable guy.
Okay.
But after, his personality totally changed. He became impulsive, disrespectful, and just showed this real lack of concern for others.
That's incredible.
It's wild, right? It really shows you just how crucial that part of the brain is for our moral behavior.
Yeah, like a light switch.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that our brains are incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And, modern brain imaging techniques like fMRI, they've allowed us to actually see this connection in action.
So we can see what's happening in the brain.
We can. When people are wrestling with ethical dilemmas, certain areas associated with consciousness light up. like the anterior cingulate cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex. These areas are involved in things like conflict monitoring and self-reflection.
So basically, when we're trying to figure out right from wrong,
Yeah.
our brain's working overtime.
Exactly. And the more active these regions are, the more deeply we're engaging in moral reasoning.
Okay, that makes sense.
It really highlights the importance of conscious reflection.
Yeah. Okay. But we're not, like, born with this full-blown moral code, are we? How does this sense of right and wrong, develop over time?
That's a great question, and that's where developmental psychology comes into play.
Okay.
One of the most influential theories out there is Kohlberg's stages of moral development.
Stages of moral development, okay.
Yeah, he basically outlined these three main levels: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional.
Right, so pre-conventional, I'm guessing that's not, like, deep philosophical thinking?
Not quite. That level is more common in young children.
Okay.
It's all about avoiding punishment and getting rewards. Very self-centered, focused on those immediate consequences.
Right, because little kids aren't really known for their deep ethical debates.
Exactly. But then, as they grow up and their consciousness develops further,
Yeah.
they move into the conventional level. Here, they start to grasp societal rules and expectations.
Gotcha.
They understand that following the rules is important for keeping things running smoothly and, gaining approval from others.
So it's kind of like learning the rules of the game.
Exactly. But now, some individuals, they go even further.
Yeah.
They reach this post-conventional level.
Ooh, post-conventional.
Yeah, and this is where things get really interesting. They start thinking about these abstract ethical principles like justice, fairness, human rights.
Right.
They're able to question societal norms and develop their own internal moral compass, even if it goes against the grain.
So they're not just following the rules anymore. They're
Yeah.
understanding the reasons behind them.
Exactly. They're thinking critically about morality.
And maybe even challenging those rules when they need to be challenged.
Absolutely. And throughout this development, the growth of empathy and theory of mind are essential.
Right.
As children become more in tune with other people's feelings, their capacity for moral reasoning, it really expands. They can better understand how their actions impact others.
Gotcha.
And make choices that consider those impacts.
That makes sense. So it's like our moral compass evolves along with our consciousness.
Precisely.
Wow, okay. But what about animals?
Ooh, good question.
Do they have any sense of, ethical behavior?
That's something researchers have been trying to figure out for ages.
Yeah.
And the evidence actually suggests that certain species, they do display behaviors that resemble ethical decision-making.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though they might not have that same level of consciousness as humans.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. Tell me more.
Okay, so, for example, chimpanzees. They've been observed rejecting unequal rewards in tasks that require cooperation.
Really?
Yeah, like if one chimp gets a better treat for doing the same work, the other one might actually refuse to play along.
Oh, wow.
It suggests they might have some sense of fairness.
Like, hey, that's not fair.
Right, like, I deserve better than this. And then there are elephants, known for their strong social bonds.
Yeah, elephants are amazing.
They've been seen helping injured herd members.
Wow.
Protecting the vulnerable, and even exhibiting what seems like mourning for their dead.
It's like they're showing empathy.
Right. These behaviors, while maybe not driven by human-like moral reasoning, they hint at some level of moral awareness, I think.
Okay. What about, like, dolphins?
Yeah, dolphins, too,
Right.
known for their altruistic behaviors.
Oh, right.
Aiding injured companions, even rescuing humans in distress.
Wow.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It is. So even without human-like consciousness, these animals seem to have, maybe a sense of morality built in.
It's possible. But, it brings up this really tricky question.
Okay.
Can we really call these behaviors ethical if they're not driven by that same conscious understanding that we have as humans?
That's a good point.
Right. It challenges how we define ethics altogether.
Yeah. It makes you think, like, how much of ethical behavior is about, conscious choice and how much is driven by maybe deeper instincts, even in us?
Exactly. And it's something to keep in mind as we delve further into this discussion.
Okay, yeah, because I think we've laid a great foundation here.
We have.
We've talked about how the brain's wired for morality, how that sense of right and wrong develops.
Yeah.
And even seen these glimpses of ethical-like behavior in animals.
Absolutely.
But there's still so much more to uncover.
There is. We're just getting started.
Yeah, I'm ready for more.
Me too. So, we've been talking about how this higher level of consciousness seems to be linked to more complex moral reasoning.
Right, like the more aware you are, the better you are at making ethical decisions.
Exactly. But what happens when that consciousness is, somehow disrupted or impaired?
Oh, that's interesting. So you're saying that people with impaired consciousness might struggle with making those kinds of decisions.
It's definitely a possibility, yeah. Think about conditions like vegetative states, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease.
Why?
All of these impact self-awareness,
Yeah.
and they can really impair moral judgment.
So in these cases, it's like people aren't fully grasping the ethical implications of their actions.
Exactly. They might not have the capacity to understand, let's take Alzheimer's as an example.
Yeah.
As the disease progresses and those cognitive functions decline,
Yeah.
individuals might completely lose the ability to empathize
Oh, wow.
or understand the potential outcomes of their choices.
So it's like they're missing key pieces of the moral puzzle.
That's a great way to put it. And it's really heartbreaking to see the impact these conditions have, not just on the individuals themselves,
Of course.
but on their families as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really sensitive topic, but it's important to talk about.
It is. And, studying these cases where consciousness is impaired, it really underscores how important awareness is,
Yeah.
how crucial thought and feeling are to making those ethical decisions.
Right, right. It emphasizes that connection between our minds and morals.
It does. And it leads us to another big question.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Do you actually need human-like consciousness to be truly ethical?
That's a deep one.
Or could there be other pathways
Okay.
to genuine moral action?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've seen, what looks like ethical behavior in animals,
We have.
even if their consciousness is different from ours.
Right, exactly. So what does it really mean to be authentically ethical?
Yeah. Break that down for us.
Okay, well, when we talk about authentic ethical behavior in humans, we usually think about actions that are driven by a few things.
Okay.
A conscious understanding of moral principles,
Okay.
empathy for others,
Right.
and a deliberate intention to do the right thing.
So it's not just about doing good.
No.
It's about knowing why it's good.
Exactly. It's about intention,
Okay.
awareness, and taking responsibility for your actions.
So is it possible for something without human-like consciousness to still show those qualities?
That's the question, isn't it? Could a machine, for instance, ever be truly ethical?
That's mind-boggling.
It is. And let's go back to those examples of animal behavior we were talking about.
Okay.
They show cooperation,
Right.
empathy, even the sense of fairness.
Yeah.
But there's a big debate
Okay.
about whether those actions are really guided by instinct,
Okay.
evolutionary programming,
Right.
or an actual, understanding of moral principles.
So it's like we're trying to figure out their motives.
We are.
Are they making choices or are they just reacting?
Exactly. Are they just following their programming, so to speak?
Yeah, and how would we even know?
It's a real challenge. Some philosophers, like Peter Singer, they propose this idea of, utilitarian ethics for non-human animals.
Utilitarian ethics, okay.
Basically, they argue that ethical behavior doesn't always require complex moral reasoning.
Right.
If an action promotes well-being and reduces suffering, it can be considered ethical even without that conscious moral reflection.
So the outcome matters more than the thought process.
In a way, yeah. It's about the results.
Interesting.
And this brings us to a really exciting area.
Okay, hit me with it.
Artificial intelligence, AI.
Oh, here we go.
It's fascinating because, by its very nature, AI lacks consciousness.
Right.
But we're getting really good at programming AI to follow ethical guidelines,
Okay.
to make choices that seem to align with our moral principles.
So we're giving machines a moral code,
In a sense, yeah. We're trying to build a moral compass into their programming.
even though they don't have feelings or experiences like we do?
Exactly. Think about self-driving cars.
Oh, yeah, good example.
They can be programmed to make decisions in accidents that aim to minimize harm.
Okay.
Like swerving to avoid a pedestrian, even if it means putting the passenger at slightly higher risk.
So the car is making an ethical judgment.
It's following its programming, which is based on ethical principles.
Hmm.
Or think about AI in healthcare.
Okay.
We can design systems that prioritize patient well-being
Right.
based on those ethical frameworks we program into them.
So it's making choices with ethical implications, but without actually understanding what ethical means.
That's the key point. It's simply following the algorithms and decision trees we create.
It's like we're outsourcing our ethical decision-making to machines.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings up a huge debate in the field of AI ethics.
Lay it on me.
Some people argue that as long as those AI systems are programmed to act ethically
Okay.
and minimize harm,
Right.
Their actions can be considered ethical.
Oh.
They focus on the outcome.
So the ends justify the means.
That's their argument. But then there's another side.
Okay, what's their take?
They say true ethical behavior, it requires intention, a sense of moral responsibility.
Right.
Things that AI currently just doesn't have.
You can't feel responsible for its actions.
Exactly. They argue that without consciousness, AI can only mimic ethical behavior.
Okay.
It can't be a true moral agent in the same way that humans are.
It's like following the rules perfectly
Yeah.
versus really understanding the why behind them.
That's a great way to put it. And this debate actually touches on some fundamental philosophical perspectives.
Ooh, I love a good philosophy tie-in.
Right. So you have consequentialist views,
Okay.
like utilitarianism, which emphasize the results of actions.
So if an action leads to more good than bad,
Yeah.
it's ethical.
Regardless of the motivation, that's the basic idea.
Interesting.
But then there's Kantian ethics, which puts a big emphasis on intention
Okay.
and acting from a sense of duty.
So it's about doing the right thing because it's right.
Exactly. Not just because it leads to a good outcome.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this highlights a core difference between us and AI. You know, we can program AI to follow rules,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have that same understanding of moral principles.
Or the ability to, like, really reason about them.
Right. And that brings us to this crucial concept, phenomenal consciousness.
All right, phenomenal consciousness. I'm ready.
Think of it as the subjective experience of feelings and sensations.
Okay.
It's the what it's like aspect of consciousness.
Or what's like to feel, to experience.
Exactly. Like the warmth of the sun on your skin, the taste of chocolate,
Chocolate.
the joy of hearing your favorite song.
Those are all part of phenomenal consciousness.
They are. It's what gives our experiences that unique personal quality.
Yeah.
That sense of what it feels like to be us.
That's the essence of being alive, right?
Yeah.
Experiencing the world from our own unique perspective.
Exactly. And here's the key point. AI, as we understand it right now, doesn't have that.
Can't feel those things.
It doesn't have those subjective experiences.
Right.
Those feelings that shape so much of human behavior.
Including our moral choices.
Exactly. So AI can process information, make decisions based on logic and algorithms.
Yeah.
But it's missing that deeper layer.
That gut feeling.
That feeling, that subjective experience that seems so central to human ethics.
Okay, so this is where we're really starting to see the line between human morality and artificial intelligence.
We are.
We've explored how consciousness and ethics work in our brains.
Yeah.
We've seen hints of moral behavior in animals. And now we're seeing both the potential and the limitations of AI.
It's a complex landscape, that's for sure.
But it feels like we need to go even deeper to understand the specific challenges AI faces when it comes to making ethical decisions.
I agree. There's a lot more to unpack here.
Right. Let's keep digging. Okay, so we're back, and we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of this AI thing.
We are. It's where it gets really interesting.
It does, because we've got these machines making decisions, even decisions with ethical consequences, but they don't experience the world like we do.
Right.
No feelings, no emotions.
Nope.
So how can we expect them to make truly ethical choices?
It's the big question.
It is a big one.
And that's where phenomenal consciousness comes in.
Right, that thing we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Remind me again.
Okay.
What is it exactly, and why does it matter so much for AI and ethics?
So phenomenal consciousness, it's that subjective inner world feeling, sensation.
It feels.
It feels like the warmth of the sun, the taste of chocolate, the joy of music.
All that good stuff.
It's what makes our experiences feel personal, unique.
It's the color of our inner world.
Exactly. And that's something AI just doesn't have.
Nope. No inner world for the machines.
And that difference has some pretty big implications for how AI can handle ethical issues.
Okay, I'm following.
So one thing, AI has a really limited capacity for empathy.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Even if we program it to recognize human emotions, respond in a way that seems empathetic,
right,
it's not actually feeling those emotions,
you
right?
got it.
It's faking it.
In a way, yeah. It's like a chatbot offering support.
Oh, yeah.
It can say the right words, but it doesn't actually feel compassion.
It's all surface level.
It doesn't have that depth of understanding.
You wouldn't want a chatbot consoling you after a bad breakup.
Exactly. And this also applies to moral emotions.
Okay, like what?
Guilt, shame, pride.
Okay.
Those are things AI doesn't experience. But they're huge motivators for us.
For our ethical behavior.
Exactly. We might feel guilty after a mistake and try to make things right.
Yeah, it makes
And
me...
AI wouldn't have that same response.
No guilt trips for AI.
Nope. It just analyzes outcomes.
Based on its programming.
Exactly.
No moral intuition involved.
It's a pretty fundamental difference.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so no empathy, no moral emotions.
That's right.
What else? What other challenges does this lack of phenomenal consciousness create for AI?
Well, it also affects AI's ability to really understand context
Okay.
and make those nuanced ethical judgments.
So even with all that data it can process, it might not fully grasp the bigger picture.
Exactly. Social, cultural, historical context.
Things that we just naturally pick up as humans,
Right.
living our lives.
We draw on all those experiences.
Yeah.
Cultural knowledge, social interactions.
Right.
AI is limited to the data it's trained on.
That's your point.
It's like reading a history book versus living through a historical event.
Oh.
You can learn the facts,
Right.
but you don't get that same level of understanding.
That lived experience.
And without that, AI can really oversimplify ethical problems.
Because it's not seeing the human side of things,
Exactly. It's not grasping the nuances of our values.
our messy human values.
Exactly. Okay, one more big difference to consider.
I'm ready.
The way AI makes decisions.
Yeah, it's all algorithms, right?
Step-by-step instructions for processing information.
Like a recipe for a decision.
It's a good analogy, and it makes AI really efficient.
Yeah, it can churn through data like nobody's business.
But it doesn't have that human element of ethical reasoning.
Intuition, personal experience, reflection.
All those things that shape our choices.
It's like AI is following a map and we're navigating by instinct.
That's a great way to put it.
Sometimes that gut feeling leads you to places a map never could.
So true. Okay, let's think about those self-driving cars again.
Oh, yeah, those are tricky.
In an emergency, a human driver might swerve instinctively.
To avoid hitting someone.
Exactly, even if it puts them at risk.
It's like an automatic moral judgment.
It is.
Years of ingrained values and experiences kicking in.
But a self-driving car just following algorithms
Might make a different call.
might prioritize minimizing overall harm, sticking to the rules.
It's kind of scary to think about.
It is a bit, yeah,
This really shows the limitations of where AI is at right now.
definitely. And we see those same limitations in healthcare.
Right. AI can diagnose, recommend treatments.
But it can't offer that human touch.
That empathy, that understanding.
Exactly. It can't sit with you, listen to your fears.
It's a machine, not a doctor.
And that difference matters. So all of this leads us to this really important question of accountability.
Right. Who's responsible when AI messes up?
That's the big question, isn't it? Is it the AI?
But it's not conscious.
Right. So is it the people who designed it?
Or the people using it.
It's uncharted territory.
It is.
We need new rules for this new world where machines are making these big decisions.
That's a lot to think about.
It is. But this has been a really amazing deep dive.
It has. Consciousness, ethics, brains, animals,
Yeah.
AI.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Yeah.
And, I think this is just the beginning of the conversation.
It definitely is. As AI keeps evolving,
Yeah.
it's not just about the technology anymore. It's about how we use it, the ethical frameworks we build around it.
And what it means for our own understanding of what it means to be human.
Exactly.
Wow. Thanks for taking us on this journey. It's been a real eye-opener.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.